All right, so the question is whether an MBA is now obsolete, especially in the age of AI. In this AI era, can you still land a job paying over $300,000? There are plenty of success stories at places like Goldman Sachs, Citadel, Google, and Alpha, but those stories rarely make it to the public. Recently, it's even been said that 25% of people who go to Harvard for their MBA still don't have a job. That's the kind of situation we're seeing now. I'd also like to talk about approaches to maximizing the ROI of an MBA. At Alpha, of course, we have people who have been accepted to Harvard as well, and other top schools too. However, as I mentioned at the beginning, Harvard is still quite traditional in its approach to MBA education. So, schools that are strong in finance and technology, or those that combine an MBA with computer science, are becoming more prominent. An MBA combined with data science or an MBA with financial engineering, for example, these are programs where you can earn both degrees. Or within the MBA itself, there are concentrations in areas like AI. As I've been saying, let's go to these kinds of new generation schools. I think it would be good if you keep that in mind as you listen today. So we have TJ here. TJ has built a career in finance coming from Chicago Booth and then moving on to Goldman Sachs. With that kind of background, especially in finance and M&A, he has a lot of experience. So today, I'd also like to talk about the necessity of an MBA in that context. All right, so first of all, let's talk about this. Is an MBA alone no longer enough? We're entering an era where that's becoming the case, and I'd like to discuss that today.
Yes, that's right. As I mentioned earlier, there's no doubt that we've entered a time when just having an MBA makes things quite challenging. However, there are still fields where an MBA alone can get you by, such as investment banking, IBD, for example, or consulting, and also, and then there are careers that follow like private equity funds. In those areas, of course, it's still very much possible to succeed with just an MBA. That's still the situation, I think. But for example, even in consulting, issues like DX and AI are increasingly becoming central topics. So if you don't understand things like AI, tech, or data science, it's becoming pretty tough to keep up. On the other hand, well, the people we support at Alpha who are getting accepted are joining companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, basically the so-called GAFAM, and now Meta is included as well. Then there are firms like Blackrock, Goldman Sachs, and Citadel. In other words, they're entering asset management, hedge funds, and investment banking. They're getting into those companies, but depending on the department, data science, computer science, and financial engineering are almost essential in some areas. So if you're aiming for those kinds of positions, then I think this means that in addition to an MBA, you'll also need skills in AI, data science, computer science, or business analytics. And on the other hand, conversely, well, if you acquire that so-called MBA plus alpha combination and install those skills, then going forward exactly that, I think it means you'll be able to land positions paying over $300,000. By the way, this isn't 3 million, it's $300,000, just to clarify. If it's the 300 series, then it's 300. Yes. So, well, I've meticulously listed out the various positions that still seem quite attainable with just an MBA, providing a comprehensive overview of these opportunities. So, areas like investment banking, specifically IBD, private equity PE funds, asset management sales, strategy consulting, and leadership roles at innovative startups. These are all still very much attainable and within reach with just an MBA. And for each of these, the typical compensation is around, well, 150K. 300K or even 1 million roughly in that range. So jobs that pay around 20 to 30 million yen are definitely within reach. And if you become a VP or higher, it goes above 50 million yen. So that's the general idea for these roles. If you're aiming for these positions, this area isn't really affected. On the contrary, these roles aren't easily replaced by AI. I think these are still positions that you can definitely target with an MBA. In fact, at Alpha, there are actually a lot of people who have landed jobs like these. And then, besides just an MBA, these are the positions where it's easier to get in if you also have backgrounds in computer science, data science, or financial engineering. So, for example, positions like product manager at GAFA or other big tech companies, business development, strategy roles, tech startups, and also PM consulting in areas like AI analytics, as well as venture capital. In these kinds of fields, you really need not just an MBA, but also backgrounds in computer science or data science. Recently, there are even master's programs in AI, so I think it's a good idea to pursue those kinds of paths. Of course, there are different layers. As a starting layer, it's usually in the 200 to 300 range, as I mentioned earlier. Well, generally speaking, finance is high across the board. It's about the same level as that. You can earn a sufficient salary in these areas. So if you add tech skills on top of an MBA, you can definitely aim for these positions. And I think the ROI is extremely high. Yes. And now these areas are extremely popular. And even at Alpha, there are many people who want to move in this direction. In fact, the number of people starting to work in these fields is increasing significantly, especially around here. The salaries in this group, or rather on this list, are extremely high. So, well, for those who are ambitious, or rather for those with drive, I think it's a good idea to aim for these kinds of positions. There are also quant trading and analyst roles at hedge funds, as well as quant asset management. Then there are data scientist positions at GAFA, executive roles at AI startups, and financial risk positions. Fields like that, for example, typically have a minimum starting salary of around 30 million yen. At hedge funds, it's not unusual for the starting salary to be around 50 million yen. You can get into these roles with data science skills as well. In fact, you don't necessarily need an MBA if you have expertise in computer science, data science, or financial engineering. That's more than enough. So, in that sense, yeah, if you really aim for these kinds of positions, then combining it with an MBA is a good option. Or you could go for a master's in tech, data science, or financial engineering. There are programs like those at Carnegie Mellon, for example. So recently, there's been a significant increase in people at Alpha going to graduate schools for financial engineering. If you go to those kinds of programs, you can aim for positions at hedge funds like these or become a data scientist at big tech companies. You can target those kinds of opportunities. I mean, with AI and all, it's really becoming a world where you're talking about hundreds of millions, like $100 million kind of world. It's really incredible. That 3 million I mentioned earlier isn't even a joke. It's the real world now. So, by all means, things like financial engineering and, of course, AI as well. Computer science and data science, on the other hand, I think are going to become almost essential skills from here on out. Yeah, for example, hedge funds are like that too. Also, even on the sell side at investment banks, people who want to do sales and trading, a lot of them are studying computer science and data science. I think it's good to aim for those kinds of fields. So it really depends on where you want to go. Yes. And whether you want to go with just an MBA or an MBA combined with data science or AI skills, or whether you want to go with just computer science, data science, or financial engineering, or a combination with an MBA, these are things you should really think about carefully. But overall, in society, computer science and data science are definitely in demand. AI and financial engineering are what you'd call tech-driven fields. Society is rapidly moving in that direction. I don't think this is something we can avoid. Since it's unavoidable, I really hope that in your generation, you'll make sure to learn these things thoroughly. Even as the world changes, I don't think these skills will ever become obsolete. On the contrary, the sooner you get into this kind of tech, if you quickly position yourself by learning about things like tech, data, and finance, then conversely, by taking that position and being able to work with technology and AI, your salary will keep rising. In fact, once you're in that kind of position, I think your salary will start increasing at an accelerating pace from here on out. So, what I recommend to everyone is not just to get an MBA, but thinking about the era ahead, to make yourself someone who can handle anything AI, tech, finance, whatever comes your way. So you don't end up like, say, the CEO of Apple. That's why, on top of your MBA, add computer science, data science, AI, or finance. For those who are interested, even financial engineering, I think we've already entered an era where this is necessary. So again, as I keep saying, if you just acquire these skills and this knowledge, you'll truly be unbeatable. Plus, you'll be able to make a living for the next 10 or 15 years. Absolutely. Probably sooner than you think. This is it. Concealer, replacing, so to speak. Even just falling behind in AI can lead to this kind of situation. Even for someone at the top of Apple, we, from our standpoint, it's absolutely essential, isn't it? So, if possible, in addition to an MBA, having that tech and AI expertise as well. Take financial engineering as a dual degree. If you do that, your salary will really keep going up from here on out. And since there will be global inflation, I think you'll make an incredible amount of money. So I really encourage you to act quickly. There's honestly no opportunity like this. And as you all know, with everything Trump is doing in the US right now, it's actually a great chance to get into a top school. That's why I really want you to apply this year. We also provide support for dual degrees, and there are many people who have already been accepted. So please don't hesitate to consult with Alpha as soon as possible. Yes.
Yeah, so dual degrees. There are now a lot of dual degree programs like MBA and data science, business analytics, or computer science. As I mentioned earlier, places like Harvard, well, Harvard does have such programs, but you might have the impression that they're not particularly strong in tech. However, schools like Northwestern, Carnegie Mellon, New York U, UC Berkeley, Washington, Columbia, and also HALT offer them. We'll be talking more about HALT in detail later today. Today, I'd like to take a closer look at what differences there are between getting a dual degree and just an MBA alone. Also, there are schools like Chicago and Stanford that offer these programs as well. There are also programs in the Asia region. And then, for example, New York University doesn't really offer dual degrees, but instead has specializations within the MBA or programs like the Tech MBA. There are programs like that as well. And then there's financial engineering. Recently, we've been getting a lot of inquiries about this field, and many people from Alpha have gone into financial engineering. While the majority are younger people, there are also those in their 30s who have gone. If you're interested in finance or if you're already trading on your own in finance, I think this field is a great fit for you. And I believe that after graduation, the salary increase is probably the most significant in this area. There are also people who have earned both a financial engineering and an MBA as a dual degree and then entered the fintech industry. Some have even started their own businesses and gone on to successful buyouts. Yes, I think this is an area that will continue to grow significantly in the future. So including dual degrees, Alpha also provides support. So please feel free to consult with us. For individual consultations, you can always reach out to us through this free consultation chat. We help you build your career strategy, and we also offer preparation for the GMAT and GRE tests. For those who need TOEFL or IELTS, we provide the most affordable preparation, aiming to finish in about 2 to 3 months, which is our standard. So please feel free to consult us anytime. Now, I'd like to have Mr. Iwata from Haru and the International Business School Admissions, who is truly a pioneer of this dual degree program. They were ahead of other MBAs in offering a combination of MBA and business analytics. And it's a program where graduates have gone straight into companies like Apple in the US and other GAFA firms. So I'd like Mr. Iwata to talk about this. Mr. Iwata, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Iwata from Automation at Haruton in Tatsumi. As was just introduced, our bank has been making steady progress in reducing what we can year after year, and we have been seeing tangible results from these efforts. Tonight, I'd like to share the latest achievements in this area. Also, since AI is a concern for many of you these days, I'd like to talk about what kinds of programs and positions are available in this context. I'd like to share those details with you so that you can make informed choices about specific programs. Furthermore, this year is also a final opportunity in some respects, and next year as well. I'd like to conclude by discussing the details of the new early land transmission system that's starting up in that context. So I've just shared my screen now. Can everyone see the screen? Is it visible to you all? All right then. To begin with, first of all, here we have the achievements of programmers, and furthermore, their salaries. All the data is available here, so you can see specific details such as the ROI, for example, the median salary, and exactly how much they earn. We've compiled 3 types of data on this. So first, I'd like to take a look at that. To begin with, if we look at Japanese people, the question is how much their salaries changed before and after coming to Holt, Japan. Basically, their salaries have doubled, and on average, they've doubled as well. That's what we found. This data is a summary of the results from Japanese people over more than 10 years. We also used AI to calculate these figures. Specifically, the average starting salary at their previous companies was $65,000. And even just taking the median after coming here, it's $120,000. Some are earning close to $200,000. Furthermore, the top earners were, even before coming here in the spring, they were already making good money. But now in the north, they're earning almost $200,000 and some even around $300,000. That's how much they make. That's what we found. That's how it is. As for Haruto, getting a job in America is a strong option. Up until now, about 80% have been working in the US. So especially in America, if you include Japan, since the salaries are listed in Japanese yen, I think the average goes down a bit. But if you look only at those working in the US, in US dollars, it's more than double. Yes, the median is $135,000. In other words, the data shows that salaries have increased by more than double, right? This was observed using AI. So specifically, what kinds of jobs, what kinds of industries? I've summarized this in English. As I mentioned earlier, the median is $135,000. For example, the consulting industry is very common. In New York, Boston, and San Francisco, the median salary is almost $150,000, with a range starting from $130,000. For managers, it's nearly $200,000, so they're earning close to 30 million yen. Next is finance. At hedge funds like Goldman Sachs and other major hedge funds, the range also starts from $120,000. Of course, if you reach the VP level, it goes up to $220,000. That's over 30 million yen. This is the data for Japanese people, as you can see. Next, let's talk about tech, especially the so-called GAFAM companies. Apple, for example. As Ms. Saka mentioned earlier, our school, well, actually, many places introduced business-related degrees. In 2018, and then he went on to work at Apple's headquarters. There are also people working at Amazon's headquarters, and some are working in Los Angeles as well. In terms of salary range, it's from $110,000 all the way up to $180,000. That's what's being offered. And finally, there are also people who either start their own startups or join local venture capital firms. For those people, well, on average, well, the median is around 90, but since equity is added on top of that, the range becomes extremely wide. Unicami, you can get it. This is a summary limited to Japanese people, but is this in America? By looking at the data of people working there and analyzing it with AI, these kinds of findings were observed. So, as I mentioned earlier, basically the average salary is, well, when you look at it, you might see that it has doubled, but that's in America. It's a place where things are generally strong. Many people aim to move to America, and that trend hasn't changed. For example, in the most recent survey, the N view is 72%. That would be 830,000 yen. With companies like Toyota present, the US market is extremely strong. So everyone try to earn in US dollars and aim to increase your salary that way. Here is a summary of the alloys. Right. Well, everyone, I'm not sure what kind of corporate income you have right now, but specifically, these are the kinds of industries, consulting, finance, tech in America, or the top GAFAME companies, or even startups like these. Yeah. Working at these kinds of companies aiming to boost their growth. This is the first point. Now, the second point, this is about specific programs. There are often questions like, in which industries and what kind of programs do you usually implement? I'll summarize this at the end, but let me touch on what kinds of professionals are involved in each industry and so on. I've summarized each one on a separate slide, but first, consulting, especially the Big Four, is particularly strong. Also, in this case, trading companies. Quite a few people have joined general trading companies as well. So to briefly summarize the key points. For now, let's talk about the Big Four. At first, the Big Four, well, across the United States, many people are joining any of the Big Four firms. The most common is MIP, especially the MV program aimed at younger professionals. There's also a strong demand to combine a second degree with a tech-related business panel. So, for example, whether it's the Big Four in New York, Deloitte in San Francisco, or in Texas, really, it's the same all across the United States. There's a strong trend of combining those 2 degrees with business service. That's a very common route into the Big Four. Alternatively, there's also the finance track, either combining with finance, focusing solely on finance or just on business analytics. Even for those people in places like Silicon Valley, the Big Four, or Texas, in other words, throughout the US, there are plenty of opportunities locally. They're concentrated there. This has been a consistent trend since 2018, ever since the surge in investment. Pursuing a second degree in business analytics or finance has become a shortcut into the Big Four. Next, let's talk about consulting. Looking at McKinsey, BCG, A.T. Kearney, and others McKinsey as well. For example, they're combining MIB with tech, specifically business analytics. As mentioned earlier, there's computer science, data analysis, and AI. Basically, these programs cover all of these areas broadly and comprehensively. So by mastering them, you can acquire tech and AI skills. So as for consulting, there are people who join McKinsey straight out of university, and there are also those who join local consulting firms in London, as well as BCG. And A.T. Kearney too. What they all have in common is, after all, that through dual degrees, they focus on tech. They combine business analytics with it. I think there are quite a few people taking this approach. And lastly, there are the general trading companies. For example, in some cases, people join directly from the MIB program for young professionals. Some people graduate from university and go straight in. For example, there are those who join Mitsubishi as new graduates, did MIB in finance, and then, through Boston Career Forum, receive job offers from general trading companies like Mitsubishi Corporation or Iroku. Yes, do you think that's the case? Or, for example, there are people who now want to change jobs. For instance, someone working at a life insurance company who takes advantage of online opportunities and then transfers directly to a Japanese trading company. There have been such cases as well. But if it's a general trading company like this, basically with an MBA or MIB program aimed at young professionals, or even just an MBA alone, you can really open up new paths like that. I think that's the key point here. This is the first slide, showing the Big Four consulting firms and trading companies. And the second one here is GAFAME. In other words, tech companies. As I mentioned earlier, there was someone who worked at Apple's headquarters. And of course, by combining a tech-focused MIB with business subjects, they became an engineer or data engineer at the headquarters. Also, if we look at the companies, for example, there was someone who became a data analyst at Amazon. Of course, he majored in computer science at Wharton University. He majored in computer science and then went on to study business science. And with a STEM degree, after working for 3 years, he became a local data analyst. Also, there's someone at Google's Japan headquarters in the MIB department. This person majored in MIB at this university. In other words, even in MIB, it's considered STEM. There are also people who answer that as the reason at Google's headquarters. As expected, what's common is combining this business field like the person at Apple's headquarters earlier, and also the content analyst at Google's headquarters. They basically graduate from university, get this MIB as their second degree, decide on business or tax, and in this way end up at the headquarters of GAFA or similar companies. They are given positions at the headquarters in the United States. Also, since there was marketing as well, some people have become area managers for Amazon locally. Yes, this was about 10 years ago. In the field of digital marketing, there are even people who have joined Google headquarters. To add to that, even those who didn't study business and took only a single major, I believe, are working at local headquarters. That's right. So basically, if you combine STEM and tech fields with business actions, earning a STEM degree really expands your opportunities to work at local headquarters. Continuing on, if we look at the so-called GAFAM 5, there are people who've made it to Tesla headquarters and also to Amazon in London. There are people in those positions as well. And yes, in the MBO group as well, basically, just like the business group and the MIB group, there are people who've made it to the list of Apple headquarters in the US, business salaries at Apple headquarters, and contest lists at Google headquarters. These individuals were not fresh university graduates, but people who had already been working as professionals. However, they had no prior exposure to design at all. These three people at Apple headquarters and Google headquarters were able to grasp the MBA and business knack, even within the context of design exposure, and are now thriving at these headquarters. Finally, some individuals, after taking email online courses from Japan, have become department heads at companies like X, formerly Twitter, or challenging themselves as talent at Microsoft. So can these US online courses also be leveraged at Japanese headquarters? Is it possible to earn a living this way? These activities are becoming visible. Here are the GAFA-related programs. And these are other career paths for Japanese students. These are the most recent career outcomes. Finally, to sum up, there's finance. Investment banks, hedge funds, and banks are extremely popular. To briefly summarize so far, there are many cases where students go from top universities to hedge funds. For example, some have joined Blackrock as analysts straight out of college. There are also those who go to hedge funds in Hong Kong, or even to private equity funds. Well, what they have in common is that they majored in finance or business. That's what they studied at university. Next, there's the MIB, the master's program that new graduates can enter. And then there are those who combine a job offer from Nomura Securities Investment Banking Division with finance and go on to hedge funds in Hong Kong. Also, there are PM analyst positions, like JP Morgan's equity research if you combine that with a master's in finance. That's what I think. There were also people who got jobs at BlackRock, and some who, after just studying finance, went into private equity funds, or became financial analysts at Barclays, or analysts at local American banks, or even joined local American investment banks like Beam in Los Angeles. So if we focus just on finance, only on this area, there are people who go straight into private equity funds or investment banks. There are also quite a few who go into asset management or hedge funds, I think. And if we look at MBAs, that's right. Even just with an MBA alone, for example, there are people who join local search funds in Boston. Yes, in Boston, well, actually, this one's in New York. There's Equitia, then in Singapore, there's Goldman Sachs, and then there's Nana Fund, a PE fund in Los Angeles, and a fintech company in London. I also mentioned the fintech company in New York, in the US. Or, for example, you could pursue a dual degree and major in business, combine it with tech or finance, and then become a VP at a bank in New York. Also, even for those in marketing, I should mention this, there are people who get hired by hedge funds in Hong Kong. Also, just to add a bit regarding the timing, it's fine to apply individually, or you could go for a dual degree, whether it's on the tech track or the French track. Depending on that, there are various routes you can take. I think different possibilities will start to emerge. Since this is all quite detailed, I put together a summary for everyone. I think this will make things much easier to understand. So I've divided it up for young professionals, showing which programs to take and how you can enter these kinds of industries. This summary is shown in this table. This is the one we looked at earlier. It provides a consolidated overview of the Big Four, consulting firms, trading companies, Georgia FA, M, financial institutions, strategy consulting, and venture capital. Looking at this, along with the detailed information I showed you earlier, I think it becomes much clearer when you see the specific company names. This is especially true for GAFA and similar companies. Many people combine tech-focused MIBs with dual tech programs, and even among working professionals, some earned an MBA and then moved into tech, or covered everything with just tech studies and went straight into GAFA. It's mostly the Big Four in America. When it comes to strong job prospects in the US, the Big Four often combine an MIB with a second degree in finance, or they combine it with engineering. Similarly, in consulting firms, it's often finance as well, or even just with engineering alone, there is currently a very high demand. So even with just a business degree, there were actually a lot of people who got into the local Big Four. Well, as we saw earlier, I wonder if you noticed that? As for asset management and investment banks, that's right. Of course, I think there are a lot of finance aspects involved. Maybe a master's in business or a master's in finance, or perhaps just a master's in finance. Yes. Or perhaps a master's in finance and DS, business economics, that kind of combination. There are also people who combine finance with other fields, and even working professionals might pursue an MBA and, well, a dual degree in finance, that kind of combination as well. As for trading companies, yes, I think there are quite a few people in marketing, not only those who completed the MIB, but also many who passed marketing programs. There are also many working professionals, such as those in MBA cohorts, or even those who studied online. Quite a few people have changed jobs online and then joined general trading companies directly, I believe. Lastly, when it comes to strategy consulting, I think there is a particularly strong demand for tech-related roles. There are a lot of people who combine the MIB with Business Max. Even among working professionals, there tends to be a lot of people with an MBA in business or just business alone. So everyone, first of all, I think it's important to consider whether you want to go to GAFA, Big Four, asset management, or somewhere else, and whether you're a young professional or already working. Based on that, choosing these kinds of programs becomes very important. Drawing from past cases, and since many of you have received job offers this year, I hope you'll incorporate this year's trends well and use them to help you choose your program. Now, I haven't gone into detail today, but starting next year, there are schools that will place a strong emphasis on finance. As I mentioned earlier, there's also the possibility of adding an engineering major. If we're talking about current trends, it's about being very attuned to trends in finance and strengthening the master's phase. Of course, making A a requirement, for example. Yes, things like that. There are already indications that things will evolve next year. So if you want to start taking action for next year already, then of course you should be preparing for that this year as well. Yes, this is it. These are the specific industries I've mentioned so far. It's a summary of which programs can be recommended based on that. All right, and finally, as I mentioned earlier, the early round for next year has already started. There's a $5,000 limited guarantee for Marakata. This applies to all programs undergraduate, graduate, and MBA. Yes, including all online programs, the $5,000 guarantee is also available. Furthermore, for pre-courses, which are English preparatory courses, there is a $10,000 guarantee for long-term courses. Although tuition increases have already been decided, with a 3 to 4% rise, this increase will be waived. As for the second degree, as I mentioned earlier, the dual degree this trend is still ongoing. So regarding that as well, you can receive the full 100% benefit, all of which must be applied for by the end of July. This is what we call the early round. Right. Of course, you should contact Alpha-Gata by then, and once you do, we'll process it and have you register. So basically, you'll have about 1 to 2 months, and if you pass the interview, you'll receive an offer at the end of August. Since this is an early round screening, if you're not interested in waiting for Nagasuma, please let us know right away. I think that will increase your chances. Definitely for next year, including the selection of programs, please consult with us first and give it a try. I think that's a good approach. At the same time, we are still accepting applications for this year as well. There are still 2 months left. The final round for 2025 is also running in parallel. Alpha's stylish San Zero program is also continuing. For the year after next, we're still aiming for 40%. Also, for EAG and Match AR scholarships, you can still aim for between 50% and up to 90%. For online programs as well, scholarships range from 20 to 40%, and even for pre-courses, there's still time to join short-term pre-courses. And then there's online as well. Since they're online pre-courses, the cost ranges from $1,000 to $7,000. As for the second pathway, depending on the campus, there are still some campuses where you can get a full 100% scholarship. So scholarships from 50 to 100% are still available. In any case, all of this is included and can be adjusted accordingly. Yeah, well, since it's this year, everyone should get started right away and prepare for this year. But if that's not possible, then you can postpone it to next year. We can also have discussions. As for me, the US visa process has resumed. So yes, this year I'll definitely be at the Boston Balkan event. And well, for those who are thinking they want to go next year, if there's still a chance this year, I encourage you to give it a try. The roundtable discussions for next year have already begun. And finally, this is the last point. As I mentioned earlier, this is about the GMAT GI's EA. The EA is now officially listed on the website, and the required score has gone up a bit. Based on the EA score, the range is from 50 to 90%. This is still just a guideline, so if you're interested, I encourage you to give the EA a try. Alternatively, if you prefer the traditional method and still want to apply this year, you can use the other scheme. Yes, you can get up to 90% with that. I really encourage you to give it a try. And moving on, there are 2 upcoming events. One is next week, right away. Professor Hart, who is very popular on the topic of AI that we just mentioned, will be speaking specifically about AI. So specifically, what kind of talent has been able to earn in the field of AI? He will also cover what kind of people will be replaced by AI and what skills are necessary, all summarized in a free 1-week session. He'll be giving a lecture, so if you're interested, you can have a great experience by visiting our website. I think this is a good opportunity for you. And as I mentioned earlier, there will also be an MBS event in Tokyo at the end of this month. Of course, I will be participating and there will be others as well. I'll be there, ready to help as much as I can, so I hope you'll come. I'd really like to offer advice and support to everyone. All right, so to summarize, this year, the first round will be until the end of July. It hasn't become security yet, and there's still a chance for Ludley as well, so I hope you take a look. And regarding Line as well, the early round has started and is being merged. The full Alpha Guarantee program is $5,000, and the pre-course is $10,000. Also, there is a full exemption from the price increase for the entire dual business. All of this is included, so there are various options available for application in places like that. Yes, that's right. Well, for those who have seen this year, the earthquake disaster, actually, it's next year. For now, please consult with someone as soon as possible. And if possible, I hope we can meet in Nagasu or even in Tokyo.